Hi, this is Mr. Kinnemer, and today we're going to be talking about Chapter 4, Section 3 in our geometry book, Triangle Congruence by Angle-Side-Angle and Angle-Angle-Side Shortcuts. First, take a second to review over this vocabulary section. Most importantly, make sure you know what corresponding means. Understand how it applies to triangles and how we'll use it in our lesson. First, let's take a look at what Postulate 4.3, Angle-Side-Angle Postulate says. If two angles and the included side of one triangle are congruent to two angles and the included side of another triangle, then the two triangles are congruent. So basically what they're telling you here's the difference between angle-side-angle and side-angle-side postulates. In angle-side-angle, you have two angles with a shared congruent side. So we're talking about two angles with the two angles shared side. In side-angle-side, it's different because we're talking about the two sides that share an angle. Two sides with a shared angle. That's the difference between the two. So let's look at problem 1. Which two triangles out of these three are congruent by angle-side-angle? Take a second and see if you can figure it out. Okay, number 11, I'm going to say for you to complete and hit pause on this lesson to complete it for the sake of time. So I'm going to continue to number 12. Well, number 12, we know that angle G is congruent to angle I. Whoops, I need to put my pencil on. Angle I and angle C. Number 13, we know that angle H is congruent to angle N and angle A. And in 14, we know that segment HG is congruent to segment NI and segment AC. On number 15, the congruent sides that are included between congruent angles are segment HG and AC. Kind of looks like an H, so try to make that better. A, there we go. And what I would like you to do is take a moment and fill out number 16. Write a congruent statement and justify your reasoning, which means you need to explain your prediction on which two triangles are congruent by angle-side-angle. Come back ready to ask any questions or explain your answer tomorrow in class. On problem number 2, we're going to try writing a proof using the angle-side-angle congruence postulate. Number 17 asks us to complete this flowchart to prove that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle AED. In our first box, angle B and angle E are right angles. That's given to us. Segment BA is congruent to segment EA. from our given information. Also, what's given to us is angle CAB is congruent to angle DAE in our given information. Now, this first box leads us to conclude that all right angles are congruent. Therefore, angle B is congruent to angle E. Therefore, because of these three given statements, and because that all right angles are congruent to angle B and angle E, the angle-side-angle postulate tells us that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle AED. Now let's discuss another theorem, 4.2, the angle-angle-side theorem. This theorem tells us that if two angles and a non-included side of one triangle are congruent to two angles and the corresponding non-included side of another triangle, then the two triangles are congruent. So basically what they're telling you is, if you have two congruent angles and a non-included side, that tells us that these two angles are congruent by the angle-angle-side theorem. Here's an angle, and there's the side, congruent side we're talking about. The non-included congruent sides of triangle ABC and DEF are segment AC, need my pencil first, AC and DF. On problem number 3, we're going to write a proof using angle-angle-side. So we're given the information right here that angle S is congruent to angle Q and segment RP bisects angle SRQ. Now remember, bisect means cut it into two equal parts. What we need to prove is that triangle SRP is congruent to triangle QRP. And the first thing that we're asked is, how do you know which angles in the diagram are corresponding angles? Well, we know that S and Q are corresponding angles because if you notice, they both have the same arcs. Alright, so we'll put that in our blank here under number 19. The same arcs. Now, we need to complete these statements to prove on number 20 that the triangle SRP is congruent to triangle QRP. So we always start with our given statements first, and we have two of them. The first given statement says that angle S is congruent to angle Q. And segment RP bisects angle SRQ. So let's move on to number 3. Angle SRP is congruent to angle QRP through the definition of an angle bisector. And we remember an angle bisector cuts an angle into two equal halves. So angle SRP is congruent to angle QRP. Our fourth statement talks about the reflexive property of congruence. Therefore, segment RP will be congruent to segment RP. It's a reflection. Because remember, we're talking about we're also talking about two separate triangles. And finally, statement 5, triangle SRP will be congruent to triangle QRP through the angle side congruence. So in problem 4, we need to determine whether triangles are congruent. And in this exercise, we're being asked, are triangle PAR and triangle SIR congruent? And we need to explain this. So let's go through here on number 21 and examine our congruence marks. We know first off that we have congruent marks here on angle A and here on angle I. So that tells us that angle A is congruent to angle I. Make a better I there, okay? And our second set of congruent marks tells us that segment PR is congruent to segment RS. What other corresponding parts exist? And let's answer this on number 22. If you notice, we only have one vertex at point R. Well, when two angles share the same vertex, they're vertical. Therefore, we know that angle PRA and angle SRI are vertical angles. That makes them congruent. Angle PRA is congruent to angle SRI because they are. You'll have to excuse the interruptions by my children. So we were talking about angle PRA and angle SRI being vertical. So therefore, yes, those triangles are congruent through angle side. On your own, complete the lesson check. I will grade this tomorrow when you come to class. And please feel free to ask any questions you like tomorrow morning, beginning of class, to make sure you have this information correct.